Hello everyone. Today we are going to start with our new chapter, that is the legal and other affairs, and that is chapter number 4 of the current affairs part. Under this chapter we are going to discuss certain judicial processes of a High Court and Supreme Court. Plus there are certain amendments in the certain laws. So we are going to discuss that part also. Okay. So now I am starting with the chapter. As you can see in the photograph, it is Supreme Court of India, the highest court in India. Now, it is the highest court in India. It means under judicial system, Supreme Court is the highest court. Below that, there is a High Court. Below that, there is a Session Court. And below that, there are different layers like a criminal, civil, matrimonial, family. Okay, then special tribunals. There are different layers, but highest court in India is only Supreme Court of India. Okay, now being a highest court in India, it holds extreme power in the judicial system. Now what is the meaning of extreme power? Extreme power means they can pass any judgment, any decision in any case. They can pass a death penalty also. They can pass life imprisonment also. They can impose any monetary penalty also. So they have extreme power in judicial system, and they can pass any decision. Okay, and any government, any political party, prime minister, president cannot stop Supreme Court from passing any judgment, because Supreme Court is the highest authority in India and they have power to pass any judgment. Then third point is the provisions are specified in chapter 6 part 5 of the Constitution of India. Now all the provisions related to Supreme Court functionality are explained under chapter 6 part 5 of the Constitution of India. And article 124 to 147 under part 5 of the Constitution deals with the independence, powers, jurisdiction and procedure of the Supreme Court. Now we are going to discuss each and every term here. Okay, so first term is the independence. What is the meaning of independence? Independence means any political party, any central government, any union minister, any cabinet minister, any president cannot interfere in judicial process of the Supreme Court, and not only Supreme Court, in any court. It means each and every court in India will act independently. Okay, any government, whether it's a BJP, whether it's a Congress, cannot interfere in a decision making process with any court system. They don't have power. Yes, we can say that certain judges are appointed through a prime minister with the approval of a president and everything. That is fine, but this power will continue till appointment only. After that, when actual judicial process starts, then any political party cannot interfere in any decision making process. Okay, so that is the meaning of independence. Second is the power. So they hold extreme power. Then jurisdictions means they can entertain any type of cases, whether it is related to company law, whether it is related to crime, whether it is related to any money laundering. They have extreme power. Okay, so that is the meaning of jurisdiction. And procedure of the Supreme Court, article 124 to 147 also explain different procedures for every case hearing. Okay, and you have to follow that mandatorily. Alright, next, continue with the Supreme Court part. One Chief Justice of India is appointed under Supreme Court. Now what is the meaning of Chief Justice of India? There are around 33 to 34 judges of the Supreme Court, but above that one superior judge is appointed, which is known as the Chief Justice of India. And Chief Justice of India is appointed by President, but there are certain procedures. Okay, they directly cannot, President cannot directly appoint any particular person as a Chief Justice of India. There are different procedures, different committees are formed, different recommendations are taken from the different judges, ex Chief Justice of India, and after that President will finalize one name as a Chief Justice of India. So it's a actually long process. Then Justice Sharad Arvind Bobde is the current Chief Justice of India. After resignation and after completion of the term of Ranjan Gogoi, who was ex-Chief Justice of India, when he resigned, after that Sharad Arvind Bobde was appointed as Chief Justice of India. Okay. In fact, Ranjan Gogoi suggested that Sharad Arvind Bobde is the best candidate for a Chief Justice of India. He recommended his name. Okay. And after that, President approved the same. Next, provisions are specified in Chapter 6, Part 5 of the Constitution of India, and one Chief Justice of India plus 7 other judges maximum. And Supreme Court added 4 more judges, and therefore current strength is 34. So current total judges numbers are 34, including Chief Justice of India, and it was approved in the year 2019. Next, Supreme Court judges are appointed by the President after consultation with Supreme Court and High Court. See, what is the actual process? Ex-Chief Justice of India will recommend one name at the time of termination or resignation, whatever is the situation. Correct? Now, after that recommendation, President will check out his eligibility. Then President also consult different judges of the Supreme Court and some judges of High Court. And after actual consultation, they will appoint one Chief Justice of India. Okay. So this is the actual process. Then other judges are appointed by the President after consultation with CJI. Now suppose CJI is appointed, that is Chief Justice of India is appointed. Now situation is there are total other 33 judges. Now suppose one judge is putting resignation. Now CJI decided that we have to appoint one more judge to fill up that particular casual vacancy. So what CJI will do, CJI will inform President of the India, and they will consult, and after that one person will be appointed as a Supreme Court judge. Okay. Then this consultation is compulsory. Now for every appointment, whether it's the appointment of Chief Justice of India, whether it is appointment of normal judge of a Supreme Court, consultation process is compulsory. Any single authority cannot directly appoint any judge at any particular time. And if they are appointing directly without any consultation, then you can say that it is unconstitutional act. Okay. Next, now we are going to see certain benchmarking judgments of the Supreme Court which was passed in the year 2019. Now first is judgment on Char Dham Highway project. Now you can see in the map, Char Dham is a 4 holy places as per Hindu culture, and that place is Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath. Okay. Now government was planning to connect these 4 places through proper highway construction, and the total length of the highway will be approximate 900 kilometer. Okay, we can see the points now. Supreme Court cleared Char Dham Highway project in August 2019. In August 2019, construction of this particular highway was approved by Supreme Court of India. This project will connect 4 holy places of Uttarakhand of approximate 900 kilometers. The total length of that particular highway will be around 900 kilometers. Court asked Union Environment and Forest Ministry to form high-powered committee for environment concerns. And judgment was given by bench of Justice Rohinton Fali Nariman and Justice Suryakant against the order of the National Green Tribunal. Then committee will conduct a meeting quarterly for a suggestion and discussion. Committee will also study impact of the project on Himalayan valleys. More plantation work will be conducted to reduce negative impact. Plantation should be done 10 times the number of trees cut. Now see, what is the actual story? NGT, you can see one name NGT, that is the National Green Tribunal. Actually, case was filed with the NGT, that is National Green Tribunal. Now National Green Tribunal is the highest judicial system who is going to handle environmental related cases in India. That is NGT, National Green Tribunal. Now case was lying with the National Green Tribunal. Now at that particular time, NGT stated that we cannot approve this particular project. We cannot approve Char Dham highway project. So obviously they have to mention certain reasons. So what they mention, it will create a negative impact on environment and surroundings of that particular place, that is Uttarakhand. Okay. Secondly, if you are going to construct around 900 kilometers road, then obviously you are going to cut so many trees, and that is obvious. Third, Uttarakhand and this particular place, that 900 kilometer highways, you are going to construct this particular highways in Himalayan valleys. So obviously it will create a negative impact on Himalayas also. What kind of negative impact? At the time of construction, you are going to use heavy machinery and everything. It will create a huge pollution. It will create heatness. So obviously it will create a negative impact on snow and ice of the Himalayas. So obviously it is going to create a negative impact on particular environment. So we cannot allow this particular project. So after that, this case was shifted to Supreme Court. Now, in August 2019, Supreme Court approved this particular project. Now it's actually, you can say, a drastic change. Why drastic change? NGT stated that we cannot approve project, and Supreme Court stated that we can approve the project. It means Supreme Court must have certain plans in the mind. Now what are the plans? So Supreme Court stated that first of all, we will conduct and we will form one strong high powered committee. Committee will continuously analyze negative impact on the Himalayas. Plus we will make sure that negative impact will be reduced. And last point, you can say, you can see that here, plantation should be done 10 times the number of trees cut. Okay, so Supreme Court stated that we will take major, you can say, betterment steps. Okay, and we will try to reduce a negative impact on the environment and Himalayas and everything. But it is one of the major project for India. So we must approve this project. And therefore, in August 2019, Char Dham highway project was approved by Supreme Court of India. Okay. Okay, now moving to the next topic. Next topic is other judgment by the Supreme Court. Now in this particular head, we are going to discuss certain important amendments and certain important judgment of the Supreme Court. Then उसमें first है NGOs receiving substantial finance from the government falls under RTI Act. Substantial finance means a body can be substantially financed directly or indirectly by funds provided by the appropriate government. It was decided in the case of DAV College Trust and a Management Society versus Director of Public Instructions. And the last point is the accused charged with the food adulteration can be acquitted merely because deficiency was marginal, that is in the case of Rajkumar versus State of UP. Now, first 3 points are for a different case and last point is for a different case. Okay, first 3 points is related to substantial finance. Now what is the meaning of substantial finance? Now suppose I started one NGO and the government is helping me through financial way. Now it is known as a substantial finance from the government. But before a 2019 judgment, if government is helping any NGO through any substantial finance, then it was excluded from the purview of RTI Act, that is Right to Information Act. It means I cannot file any application under right to information, and I cannot demand any information from substantial finance of the government for any NGO. Okay, they cannot provide any information. But after this particular judgment of the Supreme Court, if government is providing any financial assistance to any NGO, okay, now whether it's directly or indirectly, a person can file a RTI and they can demand all the information of that particular substantial interest. Person can demand that particular information about that particular transaction between NGO and the government. Now, there is one word, directly or indirectly. What is the meaning of directly? I am owner of a particular NGO. Government asked me, you need any financial help? I said, obviously, it's an NGO, I need financial help. Government transferred, suppose, around 10 CR. So it's a direct help, direct financial help, direct financial assistance. What is the meaning of indirect? The indirect means government is not providing any fund, but the government is giving some other benefit. What other benefit? Suppose I need a particular land, and land owner is actually government. Now suppose I am just filing an application to the government and I am saying that I just need this particular land for a development of my NGO. So what is the value of this particular land? And are you interested to sell this particular land to me? Government stated that the land value is around, suppose, 5 crore. Well, see, it's an NGO. We don't have any strong financial backup. So I need certain assistance from the government side also. Certain financial help from the government side also. Government stated that, okay, fine. We will sell this particular land at 3 crores. What is the actual value of the land? 5 CR. Government is selling with this particular land for 3 CR. Correct? So it is indirect funding, indirect financial help. So if government is helping me through direct finance or through indirect finance, ultimately, what I'm saying, ultimately it falls under the category of RTI Act, and any person, any citizen can demand this particular information. Okay, and this particular judgment was given by the Supreme Court in 2019 under the case of DAV College Trust and Management Society versus Director of Public Instruction. So you have to remember case name also. Alright. And this point number 4 is for a totally different case. Name of the case is Rajkumar versus State of UP. And what is the point number 4? Accused charged with the food adulteration cannot be acquitted merely because deficiency was marginal. What is the meaning of this particular point? Suppose I am a manufacturer of Samjo Maggi. I am manufacturer of Maggi. Okay, as per government rules, there is a one content which is actually harmful, but that particular content I am using in Maggi production. Now, government guidelines stated that if any manufacturer is using this content, then quantity must be limited in nature, and this is the limit. Government prescribes certain limit for this for using of that particular harmful substances. Okay, now I started my production and I'm using that particular content as per government guidelines only. But suppose if I'm using that particular content beyond specified limit, then it is harmful for the general public. Obviously it is harmful, but the negative impact is not that much dangerous in nature. It means if government is saying that you can use this particular content up to 5 milligram, okay, not more than that, I am using 15 milligram because more quantity will add more taste in the in that particular product. So it's my need actually. All right. Now government standard 5 milligram, my standard 15 milligram. Then obviously it is harmful product in nature for general public. Now government is saying that you cannot use this particular content or a particular harmful substances up to specified or beyond specified limit, but I am using that particular up to 15 mg also. Government is taking legal action on me. Now in court I am arguing that, see, 15 mg is not that much harmful, correct? Secondly, if I am using more content, then actually it is very tasty in nature. So obviously it is helpful for my product also. And negative impact does not leads to any death. What maximum can happen? Loose motion, headache, weakness, vomiting, that's it. There is no huge negative impact on that particular human being's health. So obviously it is allowed. It's not a major issue. But under 2019, in 2019, under the case of Rajkumar versus State of UP, government stated, Supreme Court stated that if any company, any manufacturer, any producer is using any particular content beyond specified limit, even if it is not harmful in nature, even if it is not creative negative impact on a human being, but if a manufacturer is using more content as compared to specified limit, then obviously it is punishable in nature. Alright, so this judgment was passed by the Supreme Court in case of Rajkumar versus State of UP. Okay, now highest court, Supreme Court. Below that, High Court. So now we are going to discuss certain points related to High Courts in India. So second highest judiciary system after Supreme Court. There are total 25 courts in entire India. Okay, generally each and every state will hold one High Court. Okay, it means one state must have one High Court. But in this particular scenario, there are right now total 25 High Courts only. So we are going to check out list of the High Courts at a particular places, at different places. Allahabad, it means there is Allahabad High Court. Andhra Pradesh, Bombay, it is still Bombay High Court, not Mumbai High Court. Okay, then Calcutta, it's not a Kolkata High Court, it's still Calcutta High Court. Then Chhattisgarh, Delhi, Gujarat, Guwahati, HP, that is Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Jharkhand, Karnataka, Kerala, MP, Madras, Manipur, Meghalaya, Orissa, Patna, Punjab and Haryana, Rajasthan, Sikkim, Telangana, Tripura and Uttarakhand. So if you calculate this, there are total 25 High Courts in India. Now one interesting point is here, that is there is no High Court in Goa. So there are 2 to 3 states which doesn't have any single High Court in that particular state. So why? So let's discuss that also. Bombay High Court is shared by Goa and Maharashtra. See, Constitution of India states that each and every state must have one High Court, but Goa doesn't have any High Court. They are sharing High Court with Bombay. So basically Bombay High Court is handling 2 types of cases. One case related to Maharashtra jurisdiction also. Second case related to Goa jurisdiction also. Okay, so Bombay High Court is shared between 2 states. One is Maharashtra and one is Goa. Then Guwahati High Court is shared by Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh. Just like that, Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh doesn't have any high court, but they are sharing high court with Guwahati. Then Delhi has a high court of its own among union territories. There are different union territories in India. Div Daman, Andaman and Nicobar, just Delhi. So any union territories doesn't have any high court except Delhi. Then Article 214 states that each state of India have a high court, which I already explained. And Article 215 and 216 states powers of high courts. Okay. Okay, moving on to the next topic, Central Administrative Tribunal. Okay, so Act was introduced in the year 1985, introduced for the administering justice to the aggrieved government servants. Suppose I am working under one particular government department. Okay, and in my particular department there is a high level of possibility or high level of practice of corruption and everything. So if I want to file a complaint of that particular department head, then I can file a directly complaint to the Central Administrative Tribunal. Then it was introduced through Article 323A of the Constitution of India. Actually, originally Constitution of India doesn't cover Central Administrative Tribunal. But at particular level, government introduced certain amendment in the Constitution of India, and at that particular time they introduced Article 323A, and CAT concept was introduced in that particular amendment. As a result of the judgment dated 18th March 97 of the Supreme Court, the appeal against the order of the Administrative Tribunal shall be lie before the division bench of the concerned High Court. Suppose if I am filing a complaint with the CAT, that is the Central Administrative Tribunal, but if decision is not passed in my favor, then I can file an appeal with the High Court, and after that I can move to Supreme Court. Then CAT was introduced in the year 1985. There are total 17 benches and 21 circuit benches all over India. 214 organizations are covered under Administrative Tribunals Act 1985. Almost majority of the government departments are covered under this particular act, and the principal bench is situated at New Delhi. Okay. Next, moving to new topic, that is a Company Law Tribunal. Now, what is the meaning of Company Law Tribunal? So, basically, if any person wants to file any complaint related to company law, then you have to move to National Company Law Tribunal. See, if I want to file a complaint under criminal case, then I will move to criminal court. If I want to file a complaint related to my property dispute, then I will move to civil court. If I want to file a case related to divorce, then I will move to family court. Just like that, if I want to file a complaint related to Companies Act 2013, then I will move to National Company Law Tribunal. Okay, so established under section 408 of the Companies Act 2013 with the effect from 1/6/2016. They will solve the dispute related to companies. Principal bench is situated at New Delhi, and there are a total 33 NCLT in all over India. So there are total 33 National Company Law Tribunals are established by government. Okay, and they all are going to handle the cases related to company law. Next is National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. Now, if suppose I am filing a complaint with the NCLT, that is National Company Law Tribunal, and if I am not satisfied with the decision of the National Company Law Tribunal, then I will move to National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. So NCLT is on a lower level and NCLAT is on a higher level. So if any person is not satisfied with the decision of NCLT, then they will move to NCLAT. Okay. Then established under section 408 of the Companies Act, they will solve the dispute related to companies which are appealed from NCLT under section 410 of the Companies Act. They will handle appeals against the order which is passed under section 61 of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. See, NCLT will handle matters related to company law, but they are going to also handle matters of insolvency and bankruptcy code also. Plus, they are also going to handle different cases of company law plus bankruptcy code, that is insolvency and bankruptcy code, along with the Competition Act also. So basically, NCLAT are going to handle three types of cases: case related to company law, case related to insolvency and bankruptcy code, and a case related to Competition Act. Okay. Next topic is ICSI, whole and soul for CS student. So ICSI was incorporated on the 4th October 1968 and headquarters is situated at New Delhi. 4 regional offices: Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai and Kolkata. Total 70 chapters across India. Chapters means centers. Then contributing towards the socio-economic growth and introduction of a new program, that is CSEET, and you all are students of CSEET. Before introduction of CSEET, there was one course which was known as the CS Foundation. Actually, ICSI scrapped CS Foundation and they introduced CSEET. Okay, so there is no more CS Foundation, there is only CSEET now. And celebration of 47th National Convention of CS between 14 to 16 November 2019 at Jaipur. They organized one convention, one meeting conference with all the CS fraternity, and it was conducted between 14 to 16th November 2019 at Jaipur. 2 days national conference was conducted on 4th 5th Jan to 2020. The theme of the conference was Governance Beyond Compliance, Expanding Horizons for CS. Introduced UDIN by ICSI. Now, what is the actual meaning of UDIN? Actually, I am not discussing UDIN concept here in depth because we already discussed this particular topic in chapter number 1. Okay, so you can refer the same thing here also. So UDIN will be mandatory from the 1st October 2019, and ICSI celebrated 51st Foundation Day on 4th October 2019. So ICSI completed 51 years in this particular field. Next is the UDIN. So UDIN stands for Unique Document Identification Number. UDIN is mandatory for every document except an e-forms, and introduced UDIN by ICSI. UDIN will be mandatory from the 1st October 2019. Purpose is ease of maintaining. Okay, before moving to the purpose, just brush up UDIN concept. So what is the actually UDIN? Suppose if I am filing, I am just giving an example. Suppose if I am filing any document on particular government website. First of all, I filed PAN. Then after that I submitted my photograph. And after that I submitted my residential proof. I submitted 3 documents. Okay. Suppose 2 documents are pending in nature. I already submitted 3, 2 pending. Now suppose if I want to find out, which documents are pending in nature, then simply I can visit that particular website. I will find out, I will submit it already this document, this document, this document. Okay, fine. 2 documents are pending, so I have to just submit this particular document. You can easily check out this. Okay, just like that. This concept was introduced for practicing CS. See, practicing CS are signing many reports, many documents, okay, in one particular financial year. So if they wants to find out, if they wants to maintain track record that how much documents are signed by them, that particular practicing CS in a particular year, then simply they can visit UDIN, and UDIN will give entire record from 1st April to 31st March, this particular practicing CS sign this particular number of documents along with the name of the company, name of the document, name of the report, each and everything. Okay. Then purpose of UDIN. So ease of maintaining register of attestation, prevent counterfeiting of certifications, sealing number of certifications, issues by CS in practice. Okay. Next is sustainable development fee by Bhutan. Now actually it's a painful thing for Indian. Why? Let's discuss. So Bhutan introduced a sustainable development fee for a regional tourist. Lower house of Chogdu, that is the Bhutan parliament, passed a legislation for imposing certain fees during stay in the country. Sustainable development fee is applicable to only tourists of India, Bangladesh and Maldives. Sustainable development fees charges 1200 Bhutanese Negal Drum, approximate $17, and fee is applicable from July 2020, and according to Bhutan, tourists of specified countries are disturbing Bhutan's ecology system. See, this particular rule is applicable for a tourist of only particular 3 countries: India, Bangladesh and Maldives. It means I am an Indian. If I am visiting Bhutan, I have to pay 1200 Bhutanese Negal Drum. Negal Drum is the currency of the Bhutan. Like we have a rupees, US dollar, just like that the Bhutanese Negal Drum. So I have to pay additional 1200 Bhutanese Negal Drum, because as per Bhutan government statement, citizens of India, Bangladesh and Maldives are creating more nuisance in Bhutan while they visit. They are creating more pollution as compared to other tourists. So just for the prevention of Bhutan's ecology system, they introduce sustainable development fees. Okay, I'm not sure you are aware about that certain facts of the Bhutan, but let me discuss this also. Bhutan's 90% land is covered with the forest area. Average life of Bhutan people is 100 years. Average life. Okay, in India, average life is 60 years. After that, we are thinking that it's a bonus, correct? But for Bhutanese people, for Bhutan citizens, it is 100 years average life. So just to compare Indian scenarios and Bhutan scenario. So what Bhutanese government want, they just want to protect their particular ecology system, and for upgradation of ecology system, they are just imposing 1200 Bhutanese Negal Drum on Indian, Bangladesh and Maldives citizens. Okay. Next is relocation of African cheetah. Now, under this, Supreme Court allowed the introduction of African cheetah in India on 28th January 2020. Relocation must be done after examination of the condition of India and its suitability. Petition was filed by the National Tiger Conservation Authority for permission for relocation of cheetah from Namibia to India, and permission was given by the Supreme Court to relocation of the cheetah at Kuno National Park or any part of India, and proper examination must be conducted before shifting. See, NTCA actually filed an application for a transfer of a cheetah from Africa to India. So they filed one petition and application with the court, and they stated that we want permission because it helps to attract tourists in India also. Okay, but the Supreme Court stated that it is difficult. Why? Because environment facilities are different in South Africa, and cheetah is habitual with that particular environment, and that particular environment, if it is not available in India, then it will create a negative impact on health of that particular animal. So before granting permission, you have to analyze all the scenarios, environmental situations, and other factors which are important for animal's life, and after that we can grant approval. Okay, priority was given to Kuno National Park. It means if cheetah shifted to India, then priority is always Kuno National Park. But again, we have to check out certain criterias before shifting of that particular animal. Okay, next is World Ozone Day 2019. So it was introduced for the preservation of ozone layer, as we are very much aware about that ozone concept. There is a ozone layer which protects human being from the dangerous rays of sun. So this is the concept of ozone layer, and celebrated on the 16th September as per Montreal Protocol. Then the Montreal Protocol was signed in 1987. Theme of 2019 was 32 years and healing. Theme of 2018 was keep cool and carry on Montreal Protocol. Next is Swachhata Hi Seva 2019. Now it is Indian initiative. So launched on 11th September 2019 by PM Narendra Modi, and it was actually introduced for cleanliness purpose. Theme of 2019 was a plastic waste awareness and management. It was nationwide cleanliness program. It is not restricted to any particular state. It is applicable to entire country. And a campaign was organized between 11th September 2019 to 2nd October 2019. And campaign was jointly organized by Animal Husbandry and Dairy and Drinking Water and Sanitation Department of CG with UP state government. Okay. Next is the ban on single-use plastic. So India decided that we want to ban 6 types of single-use plastic. What is the meaning of single-use plastic? Single-use plastic means one-time usage and then throw it away. Okay, so you can see in the picture plastic bag, plastic bottles, plastic plates, straw. Most importantly, we are just using for one time and throw it away. Certain sachets and plastic cups. So India decided to ban this 6 types of plastic. So India imposed single-use plastic ban from 2nd October 2019, 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. So it was decided on that particular day. 6 single-use plastics are banned, like bags, straws, cups, plates, small bottles, and certain sachets. Goal is to make India free from single-use plastic by 2022. As per National Geographic, only 9% plastic items are recyclable, and rest end up either buried in land or water. As per National Geographic, they stated that only 9% plastics are recyclable. Others are not recyclable. It means 91% plastics are you can say impossible to recycle. Okay, so it's actually serious issue, and most of the plastic is not biodegradable, and the plastic is one of the major issue of the world. Okay, next topic, illegal sand mining in Yamuna River. So it was one of the major issue because some illegal activities started at the around Yamuna River, and the main illegal activity was the sand mining. Okay, so let's just check out the points. So National Green Tribunal formed a committee to examine illegal sand mining in Yamuna River. This decision was taken by NGT, that is again National Green Tribunal bench, headed by the NGT chairperson Justice Adarsh Kumar Goel. Then a complaint made by Anil Kumar Singh, CEO of Delhi Jal Board with NGT. So complaint was filed basically by Anil Kumar Singh, who is the current CEO of Delhi Jal Board. Okay. So complaint was filed with the NGT for some legal action. So NGT directed Delhi's district magistrate, Delhi Pollution Control Committee and Central Pollution Control Committee to look into this matter, just to stop this activity, because obviously sand mining is a serious issue, because sand is actually helpful to prevent a flow of the water. So it is one of the major issue. Next is the basic meeting on a climate change. So first point is the basic includes. So basic is actually short form, and it includes Brazil, South Africa, India and China. These four countries are the members of the basic. Okay. Then conducted 28th meeting in Sao Paulo, that is Brazil, during August 2019. The main issue was the climate change. Four countries conducted a meeting to study impact of the climate change and to take certain necessary steps. Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar represented India and mobilizing around $100 million annually by 2020 for a climate change, and that is also on a yearly basis. And the next meeting will be conducted by China. Next is new topic, that is the SARL index, that is the launch of state rooftop solar attractiveness index, that is SARL. So basically this particular project focuses on solar panels, implementation of the solar panels. So Ministry of the State for Power and New Renewable Energy and Skill Development and Entrepreneurship launch SARL. State of Karnataka has been placed first rank for SARL. It means they implemented in the best practical and possible way. Then Telangana second rank, Gujarat third rank and Andhra Pradesh fourth rank. And SARL has been designed by, so actually it was designed by various departments like Ministry of New Renewable Energy, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, then Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry of India, that is ASSOCHAM, and EY. Okay, that is one of the big four chartered accountancy firm. So EY is also a member of this particular project.